A crime that has captivated the world, a true crime story of movies and books, has come down to this quiet neighborhood in Massapequa Park. Neighbors still can't believe one of the suspected Gilgo Beach killers was living among them.
State police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
I'm inside the house.
What house?
I don't know.
Hello everyone. Welcome to World of Crime. Today we are here to delve into the chilling case of Rex Heuermann, known as Gilgo Beach murders. Shannon Gilbert's disappearance inadvertently led to the revelation of the burial site of the Long Island serial killer. Shannon, a 24-year-old originally from New Jersey, had aspirations of becoming a theatrical actor but was working as an escort in May of 2010 when she disappeared. Approximately 8 months after her disappearance, a police officer and his canine discovered a body at Gilgo Beach, the location where Shannon was last seen. The body was wrapped in burlap and had decomposed to a skeleton hidden in the thick underbrush alongside the busy parkway. However, the body found, belonging to a 24-year-old named Melissa Bartholomew, was not that of the missing Shannon, but was instead a beautician by profession and also worked as an escort in her Bronx neighborhood. On the evening of July 10, 2009, Melissa attempted to contact an ex-boyfriend and witnessed a client transfer $900 into her bank account. That same night, she went missing. For the next week, no one received any further communication from her. Then her younger sister, who was 15 years old at the time, received a call, but it wasn't Melissa. "Do you know what your sister is doing? She's a whore," the odd man stated before hanging up the phone. In the 6 weeks that followed, he phoned 7 more times, each time for less than 3 minutes. He spoke to the adolescent exclusively throughout his nighttime calls and maintained a low, soothing voice throughout. He always ended the call when her mother answered it. He boasted about his want to have sexual relations with the adolescent and the sexually graphic things he allegedly performed on Melissa. On top of that, he threatened to come for her and claimed to know her exact whereabouts. Melissa was dead. He informed her on their last contact, and he was going to sit back and watch her decay. Rex would get dressed, grab his briefcase, say his goodbyes to his wife, and make his way from his Massapequa Park home to the train station, where he would then travel to his workplace in Manhattan. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches and weighing 250 pounds, Rex possessed a menacing stare. You could feel a shiver go down your spine if you met his gaze. However, his neighbors saw him for what he really was, a reclusive, married father of 2 in his 59th year. They thought his mansion was the only peculiar thing about him. His modest home seemed more run-down than refurbished, considering he was the owner of the architectural business RH Consultants and Associates in Manhattan. He and his family had resided on the property, which he purchased from his mother in 1994, directly across the water from where the remains were subsequently discovered. The deaths of Amberlynn Costello, Maureen Brainard Barnes, and Megan Waterman were discovered in the same spot on December 13, 2010, 2 days after Melissa Bartholomew. The Gilgo Beach Four were given that moniker due to the numerous unsettling similarities among them. The 4 girls were found wrapped in burlap and thrown within 500 feet of each other. From the very start, it was clear that their murderer had a preference. Every one of the females was an escort who had advertised her services on Craigslist. They were all young women in their early to late 20s who died brutally, and they were all attractive and little. Amber Costello, a 27-year-old resident of Long Island, was located about 10 miles north of her home. Dave, who lived with her, told the Daily Beast that despite her little stature and being very lightweight, less than 100 pounds, she had no fear of anything. They worked together. Amber would use his phone to set up client appointments, and he would keep an eye on when they came to get her. On occasion, he would even be close by to intervene if matters escalated. Amber took a few calls from a potential new customer on September 1, 2010. $1,500 was the agreed-upon price by 10:30 that night. The customer arrived at the residence after the clock struck midnight on September 2nd. Amber sprung a swift move on him as soon as he entered. A friend of hers allegedly posed as her irate boyfriend and demanded to know what was going on, as revealed in court records. Rumor has it that Rex abruptly walked away, claiming he was only joking and that he would give Amber a call later. The money he brought remained with Amber. His less than pleasant SMS message arrived at 1:18 in the morning. He wanted to see her that day, so he contacted her many times. Amber met up with this customer on September 2, 2010, but she forgot her phone at home. She vanished without a trace, and no one ever saw her again. Her companion told authorities about the individual he noticed after her death was discovered about 2 months subsequent. As a large man with black hair and spectacles, he resembled an ogre and was thus difficult to forget. His Chevrolet Avalanche was also in the driveway, which was an additional detail. The trim produces a unique triangular shape between the truck's bed and the cab, which is why her buddy recalled it. Without more information, it was difficult to follow up on the promising lead. On June 6, 2010, 22-year-old Megan Waterman vanished from Long Island when she was residing in Scarborough, Maine. The family of Rex was on vacation in Maryland when this happened. At about 1:30 in the morning, Megan returned to her Long Island residence and was last spotted leaving her hotel to meet with a customer. At 3:11 a.m., close to Rex's house, her phone made its final journey to Massapequa Park and pinged. Months after that, her remains were discovered around 15 miles distant. Her hands were restrained with duct tape. Maureen Brainard Barnes was a mother raising her children alone. While she pretended to be a model for her family, she was working as a telemarketer and cashier. In her desperation, Maureen considered taking a short-term job as an escort in order to pay the bills when the eviction notice arrived in the mail. She visited New York City in June 2007 to see customers. Her buddy informed 48 Hours that Maureen had regulars that she visited. It was as if she vanished from existence after that. Her acquaintance received an unusual phone call a few days down the road. A guy informed her that Maureen was quite good in a whorehouse in Queens. His description of Maureen was spot on. 3 leather belts were then discovered connected around her torso. As the Suffolk County Police and District Attorney's Office battled with a string of unbelievable internal crises over the subsequent 12 years, the investigation became cold. The conviction of James Burke, the police commissioner at the time, for assault and attempted murder by use of contaminated heroin occurred at the beginning of 2016. What did he do to merit such harsh treatment? It seems like he tried to take the duffel bag that Commissioner Burke had stashed in his car's trunk. The commissioner, on the other hand, was using it to stash his cigars, weapons, and violent hardcore porn. Reportedly, the commissioner also demoted the task force leader and banned the leaving investigators from discussing the issue with anybody on the squad to drag down the inquiry. Additionally, he first declined assistance from the FBI. Next up came Thomas Spota, the district attorney for Suffolk County. He likely wishes he hadn't assisted James Burke in becoming commissioner in 2012, because Thomas was disbarred for obstructing justice in the probe into his protege in June 2020. In January 2020, the infamous case resumed its progress following a huge regime shift in the Suffolk County criminal and law departments. The police finally unveiled the black leather monogrammed belt that had been secretly fastened around Maureen, an essential piece of evidence that had been withheld from the public. It has the letters WH engraved onto it, or W.A. Hoyerman purportedly. The district attorney claims that the W represents a member of Rex's family. Yet, how were Rex's whereabouts located? Those phone conversations, it seems, were the turning point. A special task force was established in early 2022 in collaboration with the FBI, the DA, and law enforcement. Their mission: to bring an end to the Gilgo Beach mystery. Returning to their initial viable clue, they pursued the harassing phone calls made to Melissa Bartholomew's younger sister. The authorities were able to track them after the third contact, since the unknown caller always ended calls before 3 minutes. Unfortunately, their search was limited to only 2 broad regions, Gilgo Beach and Massapequa Park in Midtown Manhattan. The task group then dug deep into the cell phone records. The investigators consistently found the same spots in Manhattan and Massapequa Park when they compared the locations of the victims' phones with burner phones. The legendary difficulty in tracing the user of a burner phone makes it a favorite choice among criminals. Do you remember who lived with Amber Costello? He gave the police a detailed account of her client's Chevy Avalanche, which they used to match registrations in Massapequa Park. Rex was identified as the rightful owner after comparing the registered owners to the description of a large man with black hair and spectacles. His Manhattan office happened to be located just 2 blocks away from Penn Station, the location where the majority of those calls originated. Even though they still required further proof, the task group had Rex under surveillance less than 2 months after its formation. Police were able to finally identify him thanks to the DNA. The killer left behind more than just a monogrammed belt that might lead to their conviction. Rex and his wife were identified by hairs discovered on the victims' bodies, on the tape, and on the burlap sack that had been wrapped around one of them. They were likely acquired by Rex at his residence before being conveyed to his purported victims. After searching the family's trash, police were able to extract his wife's DNA from a water bottle. An abandoned pizza crust in the city was the source of Rex's DNA. DNA is compelling proof, but the task team required absolute certainty in this instance. As detectives probed Rex's life, they kept tabs on him covertly for almost a year. Investigating his credit card details led them to a Tinder profile he had created under the fake name Andrew Roberts. That traced it back to a 2011 created AOL email account belonging to John Springfield, which in turn led them to a burner phone. They tracked out the selfies he had been sending to potential suitors from that point on. He captured the image in the bathroom mirror, emphasizing the clear identity of the individual in the photo as Rex Heuermann, Andrew Roberts, and John Springfield. According to court filings, another email account belonging to Thomas Hawk was utilized for many searches about sex workers and cruel torture-related content. Some of the search terms used were pretty girl with bruised face porn and 10-year-old schoolgirl hogtied torture porn. Gilgo Beach murder inquiry allegedly prompted more than 200 searches by Rex between March 2022 and June 2023. He supposedly looked up John Bitroff and why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught, as well as why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer. Carpenter John Bitroff lived in Manorville, Long Island, and was a married parent. 2 sex workers, Rita Tangretti and Colleen McNamee, were murdered by him in the early 1990s. He was arrested in 2014 for their killings. Near Gilgo Beach, 40 minutes from Manorville, they were both discovered beaten and strangled. For a long time, the police have suspected that many killers may be involved. Additionally, this case is linked to Manorville in other bizarre ways. Police unearthed the bones of 4 women, a man, and a newborn girl in the months after the discovery of the Gilgo Beach 4. Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack are the only 2 ladies whose identities have been confirmed. Both were little attractive women in their 20s who worked as escorts, much like the Gilgo 4. The dismemberment of Jessica and Valerie was different from the previous 4 victims. Their bones were discovered miles apart and recognized at separate intervals. It was in Port Republic, New Jersey, at the end of spring 2000 when Valerie Mack was last seen. In a remote part of Manorville, her corpse was discovered in a forest in November of 2000, wrapped in trash bags. Gilgo Beach was the site of the April 2011 discovery of her hands, right foot, and skull concealed in the underbrush. July 2003 was the month when Jessica Taylor vanished. She was discovered in the same month in Manorville as Valerie in 2011, where her torso had been discovered in March of that year. Gilgo Beach, located less than 2 miles from Valerie, was the site of the discovery of Jessica's head, hands, and forearm. One of the victims in the Gilgo Beach murders, previously dubbed Jane Doe 7, has finally been identified 27 years after her partial remains were found. Karen Vergata remains were located in Davis Park on Fire Island in 1996. DNA later linked them to another set of remains found on April 11, 2011, along Ocean Parkway in Nassau County, according to a Suffolk County police timeline of the case. Also unidentified is the Asian guy who was discovered toothless, half-dismembered, and bludgeoned to death. The young girl was somewhere between 16 and 24 months old. Due to the bite mark on her torso, Jane Doe number 3 is also known as Peaches. Near the coastline of Hempstead Lake State Park, her remains were discovered in June 1997. This location is approximately 13 miles distant from the spot where the remainder of her remains were discovered in April 2011, wrapped in plastic. The little corpse of her daughter was discovered buried 10 miles apart from her, with the bones of Valerie Mack. For a long time, many thought the murderer may be a gardener or a builder. However, we now know that the burlap sacks weren't intended for landscaping. The assassin likely picked these hunting camouflage patterns for their special capacity to conceal the corpses. They may have remained undiscovered had Shannan Gilbert not intervened. Although Shannan's body was discovered along Ocean Parkway in December 2011, around half a mile from her last known location, her involvement in the case is not believed to be related to her. The official cause of her death is still unknown, however. The police are certain it was an accident. Nobody in her family agrees with her. The task squad apprehended their primary suspect on July 13, 2023. That evening, undercover cops surrounded Rex Heuermann on the sidewalk outside his office in Manhattan. The district attorney announced during the news conference that followed the arrest, said that Rex was undoubtedly taken aback. Not guilty is his plea.